Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sewell in Baltimore. From the outside, Baltimore is perhaps best known for death and violence, yes, as seen on The Wire. For those of us who live here, that violence is something no one likes to think about, we all hope never touches us or a loved one. But do we ever ask the question why? What's at the root of it? Why? It's a simple question with no easy answers. But our next guests are in a unique position to address it. In fact, they wrote a whole book about it. It's called Why Do We Kill? The Pathology of Murder in Baltimore. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to begin to understand that deeply important question. The book is a scathing indictment of our law enforcement, media, and political leadership, and by extension, us, the public, for not confronting this fundamentally important issue. The authors are now joining us. Kelvin Sewell is a Baltimore-born and raised 22-year veteran of the Baltimore Police Department. He won many awards and recognitions along the way. He's currently the Chief of Police of Pocomoke on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. He's also joined by his co-author, Stephen Janis. He's a longtime award-winning journalist, currently an investigative producer with Fox 45. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Good to be here.
So we're going to do a series of interviews today, but I want to start with your personal story. You were born and raised in Baltimore. When did you decide that you wanted to be a police officer?
Well, at a very young age. I can recall when I was with my mother back in the area called Cherry Hill of the city, and I seen two police officers my first time as a kid, and I asked my mother who were those two guys and what were those things on the side of their hips, and as my mother told me they're police officers, they're here to keep us safe, and those things on the hips are guns. I said, and what do they use them for? And then she went into the story what they use the guns for, and I said, well, can they hurt somebody with those? And then the whole story went into the whole story of what police officers do, and she explained it to me. And from that point on, at the age of 7, I knew what I wanted to do when I grew up.
And Cherry Hill today, it's known as a violent part of the city. What was it like growing up, and what was your relationship with law enforcement as a young African-American man growing up in Baltimore City?
Well, back when I was a kid in Cherry Hill, it wasn't as violent as it is now. However, I had a good relationship with the police. I never got in any trouble on the streets because I was never on the streets as you see so many youth today. I had a mother and father, and then they were very strict on me at a young age, and I wasn't allowed to do some of those things that you see these kids doing today. So I think that's what helped me carry my career out, my goal out as becoming a police officer.
And you won many awards and distinctions along the way. When did you decide that you needed to write this book?
Well, it's been years before the book was written. I wanted to do something, write down my experiences in the police department, and I always had individuals in the police department tell me my career wasn't like a normal career as what they had. So they would always tell me, you should write some of the stuff down. And one day I just started writing. I was in Homicide, had some free time. It's not really a lot of free time in Homicide, but when I did have a little bit of free time that I had, I started writing, and I started keeping it on the computer, just writing things down. And at that point, that's when I brought the information to Stephen Janis here, and then from there we worked on it together, and we came up with Why Do We Kill?
And so you didn't always have a friendly relationship. Talk about when you first met Stephen, and how this book came about on your end, because this is kind of a dream come true for a lot of journalists, getting the
Yeah,
inside
well,
scoop.
I mean, the thing is that I developed, it wasn't that Kelvin and I didn't have a friendly relationship, it's just that because I became a reporter in Baltimore during the height of zero tolerance, and I was writing a lot about crazy arrest stories, and the fact that the police were arresting tens of thousands of people, many of them illegal. I was not a favorite of the police department. But I became friends with Kelvin over time, just bumping into him at crime scenes, and we started talking, about, there are a lot of, we talk about, good police officers. Well, I believe fundamentally that Kelvin was one of them, and he would discuss with me. He'd say, yeah, Stephen, I'd be like, why are you arresting, people in the back of a van without anybody? This is just wrong. We know it's wrong. We started having very serious conversations, like late at night. He would call me on the way back driving out of the city, and we'd talk about a lot of the fundamental aspects of policing that he believed were misguided, and that I could see, ostensibly were misguided. And we decided, we need to put this down in some way so there's some sort of actual record of these thoughts that, some people actually care. And I think Kelvin was one person who cared, and I think it was very clear. And also, some of these issues, one of the biggest problems we have with law enforcement is how secretive it is, especially in the city, where there's really not a lot of transparency, not a lot of discussion about fundamentally what are we doing. So we decided to create a book sort of posited around the idea of why. If we just wrote a book about Kelvin's cases, which are amazing in terms of their breadth and scope, it might not be as interesting, but we both decided to sort of say we're going to posit a question and we're going to filter all these cases through a fundamental question that we think speaks to the heart of why you police at all, right? Why, if we understand people's motivations and we understand the social conditions better, then maybe we can better understand what policing needs to be. So it was really a collaboration. I mean, the time that we, can I talk about when you filed a complaint against me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the police department doesn't like police officers and we're having relationships with reporters, even good, trusted police officers with excellent records like Kelvin. And he was worried they were figuring out that we were talking a lot, so he filed a complaint against me with the police department that was harassing him. And they called me, I think you gave it to them, and 10 minutes later I got a call from the mayor's office that, do you know Kelvin Sewell? And I'm like, oh yeah. They're like, stay away from him. He filed a complaint against you. This is very serious. You know, you could be arrested if you keep bothering him. And that was just so they wouldn't think that we were friends.
I was like, watch how fast I can get you in trouble.
Yeah. It was pretty funny. Anyway.
So you write this book in the hope that it reaches people, that it makes an impact, that it changes things.
Yes.
Talk about what you hope it accomplishes.
Basically, I wanted people to see what was the real part of homicide, what was out there on the streets, not just the statistics of it. We have 200 homicides this year. We wanted to go inside of these investigations, let people know the people prior to them being victims of homicide and them becoming a homicide victim. And we went into their lives prior to and afterwards. And it was amazing because some of the stories involved so many people of different ages. Some of the victims were of different ages, from 11 years old up to an elderly person. And we went into those lives prior to, just to let the readers see that these are actually cases out here, real crime cases, and this is what Baltimore City homicide detectives go into on a daily basis. And I wanted to get to the readers and let them know that this is actually this is real out here. If you see it on TV, when an individual see a homicide or see a deceased body on TV, they're gonna see it in the casket and everything. They're gonna see it neatly in a suit or gown or whatever. But we wanted them to get the idea that when we see these type of people, they're not at the funeral home, they're not at the inside of a casket, inside with suits on and gowns. They're actually on the scene with gruesome scenes with blood and everywhere. And this is what these little kids, and it's funny because when these bodies are on the scene, little kids are out there, sometimes these daytime homicides, and they're watching this. And what I wanted people to see was, this is really, it shouldn't be the norm for these young kids out there who are watching these deceased people on the streets. So we try to get to the reason in that way. And
so we reached out to City Hall, the police department, to invite them on for this discussion, but they declined. You did, during your career, you filed a discrimination case against the police department. So what would you say to people that just say you're just like settling a score with the police department, that you know, talk more about like why you feel it was important to do this and to kind of hold nothing back, because if you held anything back from this book, it would be a shock to anyone who's read it, because it's a really honest and open assessment of your career and your experiences.
Well, I wouldn't call it selling a score. I really love being a Baltimore City police officer. I love being a cop on the streets of Baltimore City. I love the investigations, and I love to work on cases where people have gotten hurt, and just to bring that closure to their families was very important to me, because a lot of people, they don't close their life out until they get that phone call from homicide detectives saying, we got the person who killed your loved one. And that meant a lot to me, just to make that phone call and say, now the case is closed, the person's in jail, he's gone away. And you'll see a change in the people once we make that phone call. So I love being a Baltimore City police officer. I love being a cop and doing these investigations. But however, you know, I always said, you read in the book, it's more problems in the department than on the streets of Baltimore City. and that amazed me through my career to be involved in situations like that. Doing that, yes, I did file a racial discrimination lawsuit against an individual in the Baltimore City Police Department, and that was at the end of my career, during my career, and afterwards I retired and then went to work for another law enforcement agency.
Okay, well, that wraps up the introduction to our longer discussion, but we're going to get right into it in our next segment. So
Okay.
Thanks for joining us for this part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And stay tuned for the following parts of this discussion. We're going to go deep into this book and what it means today. Join us at therealnews.com. Thank you for joining us.